heard of that before, right? But essentially, you're trying to meet somebody where they are, and you're trying to just help them change their framework, their mindset a little bit to move down the line closer and closer and closer to changing the behavior, right? You're going to think about it. You're going to prepare for it. You're going to, right? There's a step. You're going to consider it. Whatever. But a part of that, which I don't know that it's directly addressed in that motivational interviewing model, is the belief that you can do it. And that is a big thing that gets in the way of people stopping really maladaptive behaviors. Rob, welcome to Shrink Space.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for welcoming me to my own show.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just want you to know we're excited to have you.
How very welcoming and inclusive you're making me feel. I really appreciate that.
Good.
I want to dive right in because I feel like the universe helped me come up with the theme for our conversation today. And I think it's germane for a couple of reasons. One, I've had a couple of these conversations in the past week at work. And one is we're nearing the end of the year. So the topic I want to talk about is change. Can people change? Which is obviously, and we talked a little bit about this about a year ago, towards the end of the year. People make New Year's resolutions, things like that. Do people change? How do people change? So I think it's germane in a timeliness, from a timeliness perspective. But I have had two conversations in the past couple of days, which is not surprising in and of itself. I think just the nature of the conversation and the depth was asking me to describe if two people are going to change. So I'd like to talk about change today, specifically the question that oftentimes comes up in our work.
Yep.
Can this person change in X, Y, and Z areas?
Yep. Okay. I'm in.
So I'm going to describe a situation to you, and then I want you to consult me. Okay. Pretend that I'm a client and I have this person, and I want this person to be able to do these things, and I'm worried that they're unable to. Okay. So I was recently.
Are you paying me well? Are you paying me handsomely for this?
Well, it depends on the type of service I receive.
The quality. Okay. Yeah. I understood. Okay.
So hopefully you're really in it now. So I had a conversation with a leader about a week ago who was talking about a high potential person on his team to take over this person's team. And this person was viewed as high potential because they're very driven, they're extremely conscientious, and they're pretty assertive. So they get stuff done, they're reliable, and they will raise their hand to get more work and let people know what their ideas are. I think this is a good idea. I think this is a shitty idea. However, what this leader hadn't really assessed for or evaluated is this person's leadership ability. And so we had this person complete one of our assessment processes. The process revealed all those strengths. Yes. Complete agreement. And this person's ability to connect with people, to be very influential versus just pushing them and telling them exactly what to do. Management skills to be a bit more empowering and not just give people a kind of a how-to list with everything listed out. All pretty green in that respect. And this person is a younger person as well. It's probably like 35. Not had any other formal leadership experience. So with that high level understanding of the person, Dave, I want to know, can this person be an effective leader? Can this person build followership and take over what will be, for this fast-growing company, an executive leadership role in the next 2 years? Is it worth my money to invest in this person to develop them?
Let me give you my fast answer, and then I'll give you a more thoughtful thoughtful and precise answer.
Okay.
The fast answer is no.
Okay.
I think I would say it's high risk higher, because I think social comfort, social confidence, developing buy-in and followership, I think in general relies heavily on things like your social and emotional intelligence, and I think that takes longer to build
Mm-hmm.
than other things. Comparatively, I think managerial skill, behaviors around how you influence, easier to develop. But when you were describing it, it sounds like you need someone to hit the ground running and quickly be able to gain organic buy-in and followership. And that sounds like it will be difficult.
Yep.
That would be my uh, my quick reaction.
Okay. Um,
What do
my quick reaction was similar.
you? Mm-hmm.
I told the individual, there's a lot to like with this person that you've had as part of your team for a couple of years, and he's high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think the high reward is his ability to actually get things done. The culture of this organization is not too far off being really driven.
Mm-hmm.
So these folks, tend to focus a bit more on just getting shit done. And so, their leadership skills can sometimes be a little bit rusty in those types of situations to just grow over time.
Yeah.
But the leader was saying, is it worth an investment in this person in whatever way we decide what investment is to do that?
So I think as the consultant, I think what I would be looking at is what are the other, what is the kind of the constellation of characteristics look like? Because you may be looking at it and saying, okay, this person doesn't look like they are naturally a leader from like a traditional interpersonal side of things. But if they have, if they've got a lot of intellectual heft and their work product is very good, that is one way to gain followership.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times clients will feel like people have a low EQ, or that they have an empathy wobble when they're driving for results. But that doesn't, and they sort of assume it means you've got poor social skills. Well, oftentimes it doesn't mean the social skill is bad. It means that you're not prioritizing the social skills. They're not thinking about the relationships at the same level as they are getting work done.
Yep.
And helping a client, or the individual rather, reprioritize can have a significant impact on how they show up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what the rest of the behaviors look like. I'd want to know what their motivation profile looks
Right.
like. Are you oriented towards people at all? Or are you simply focused on getting things done? And so that's why you're not paying attention to people. I guess so I'd be trying to figure out, well, what are the levers that we could pull to help this person be more impactful in the
Right.
role?
And I think that's the right answer. Because there's a lot more that goes into this specific example too. Like, this person's been there for a while, has, from what I can tell, has kind of been told that he is the successor to this leader, who is retiring in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that doesn't mean that they can't change their mind, that the organization can't change their mind, but there's a bit more of a sunk cost here for this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's tricky.
Yeah.
And I think it's tricky for all the reasons that you said. Is, this person certainly is people focused, but prioritizes achievement
Yep.
and getting things done over
Mm-hmm.
collaboration and building followership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be the difficult instinct
Mm-hmm.
to shift. And then so we started talking all about, well, what would be my suggestions to help this person make that shift. But I wanted to start there because I think this is a real world example of something you and I will talk to a lot of leaders about,
Yeah.
and gets at that question:
Yes.
can people change?
Yes. Can I derail? I just had a thought.
Yeah.
I have a theory or an approach, and then give me feedback on it. Just like I would never tell an individual client, that they had bad critical thinking skills, I also never tell anyone that they have a low social or emotional intelligence. because I feel like when you say, if I tell someone your critical thinking skills are bad, I think they hear that and equate it to you have a low IQ.
Right, you're
And then
dumb. Yeah.
you sort of hit that, the mindset of there's no opportunity for growth. It's just a
Yep.
fixed, you can't do anything about it. So if I'm talking about how someone problem solves, I'm trying to think about, you need to slow down, be more strategic, try to think out of the box more, make sure you're being objective, read between the lines. I'm trying to give them like specific things that you might do differently. And the same is true with social or emotional intelligence. Just telling someone you struggle with EQ, I think feels pretty damning versus looking at it and saying you need to prioritize relationships more, you need to listen more, you need to take up more space, you need to filter more or filter less. Like I try to be more specific. And so in my mind, you don't really have anybody that's low EQ. It's you have social behaviors that are not effective. Because I feel like that's puts you in a better position for change.
Yeah.
What do you think about that
Uh,
approach?
I agree with it. And I would say that there is research that would back up the fact that when you are engaging or attempting to engage in change, behavior or change about you as a person, sometimes starting with the behavior. So if I'm low, emotional intelligence, low EQ, which would mean maybe I don't read people very well, I don't focus as much on relationships, those types of things. If I'm told I need to start focusing on relationships and I have 2 or 3 specific actions that I'm taking, that doesn't change my EQ, at least at first.
Mm-hmm.
It just causes me to make some adjustments to how people experience me.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably be pretty clunky at first if I'm doing something that I've not done before or that is not instinctual. But over time, and I'm not a neuropsychologist, but in preparation for this and just given the work that we do, I know enough to be dangerous here. Over time, that can shift some of the neural pathways in our brain. If we continue to behave in ways that are against our nature, quote unquote, or
Yep.
against our instinct, and we do it consistently enough and at some level of depth, that's that neuroplasticity that most of us have
Uh-huh.
that allows us to make some of those changes, not only behaviorally, but then it also can start to change who we are a little bit more. So maybe that person is not going to be the most emotionally intelligent person in the world, but it is going to, over the course of a couple of years, be
Mm-hmm.
noticeably more instinctual as it relates to their ability to connect with and pay attention to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I do want to go back to, because this is something I don't describe it this way. When we're talking about someone's critical thinking ability, it's the same thing. As I don't tell people, hey, you have a low critical thinking. I will say, hey, these are some things that you might want to watch out for, given
Yeah.
your approach.
Yeah.
Because I agree. I think that is part of most people's ego, even though critical thinking is not the same as intelligence. I think most
Right.
people would assume that it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think that that's true for emotional intelligence. I think there are some people who would say, yeah. Now, they may be defining it the wrong way, but I have certainly had experiences where it's almost like part of someone's identity. Yeah, I don't those soft skills,
Yes.
that hippie shit,
Yes.
that's not for me. So
Yep.
I could tell them that, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I come here to work. I come here to get stuff done, and I
Yep.
don't come here to listen to people cry and bitch and moan.
Yes. Is that a consequence of them having been told that over the course of their careers or their lives, so that it becomes a badge of honor? Because for some people, there's less stigma. I'll say this: if you told me, "Hey, David, I really think you have a low EQ," that would bother me.
Same.
Because I'm like, well, it's kind of what I did. That's sort of what my job is. It would, but some people. I mean, I wonder if you position yourself in your career where you go down a path where you're like, yeah, I'm not that interested in people, right? The empathy is low or whatever. Is it, you know what I mean? Have they sort of habituated to that critical feedback?
It's very likely. And I think what you're getting into is something I want to get into today.
Okay.
Oftentimes, I think that that's true. And the people that I can, if I take a step back, the people that I can think who say this are men. I can't recall a time that I've ever worked with a woman leader who has kind of held that up as a badge of honor. But I certainly have, like, the examples I come up with are male leaders
Mm-hmm.
who will say that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's something there
Yeah.
where it's a bit more macho, a bit part of their identity, that
Mm-hmm.
is soft. And sometimes when they say soft, it's, oh, that's like feminine. That's like a feminine approach to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That's soft. And so that's not me. So
Well, what
that's why I don't do it.
well, what's interesting about it is, just in my experience with mostly with men, when I think about EQ, I'm really thinking about, on the one side of it is your level of concern, like how
Hmm.
empathetic are,
Yeah.
and the other side of it is how insightful are you? Like, do you know what's happening with people, and do you care about it? I think people are very comfortable saying, I don't care what's happening, but I get more resistance when it's, are you able to read people? Fewer people
Yeah.
will acknowledge, I can't read people. More
Yeah.
will say, I don't care what, I'm not trying to read them,
Yeah.
but
You're
I
right.
could have do.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. That is the difference. Is, yeah, I don't care. I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I just don't give a shit. Like, leave that at home.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so going back to I think the point you made me think of, which is, so some of it is identity based.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is who I am. It kind of goes back to the episode we did probably over the summer about toxic masculinity, right? Is, all
Yeah.
right, well, as a man, I can't be concerned with the emotional needs of other people. So that's one thing.
Right.
I think another is, there's this like growth mindset, like, even if I am more insightful, that's
Mm-hmm.
debatable
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And B, I wouldn't even know how to do this if I wanted to. So I don't know. And then I don't know if I could do it. So because I'm unsure and because I think I am who I am,
Mm-hmm.
it's more reinforcing for me to think, all right, that's unimportant to me in my role because I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's part of the narrative that is in at least some people's heads as it relates to this example of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. If I make it important, then my gaps also become important.
Yeah.
So let's just minimize it all around,
Mm-hmm.
and then no big deal. I'm an,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I want to continue talking about this, but before I do, just to kind of provide a bit more of a framework for the conversation, I think when we think of change, I think there's multiple things that sometimes we want to change or we want to change in other people. So we've talked about behaviors. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to do this thing better. Okay. Then there's change in beliefs. Like or when we've talked about relationships on our show before, right? Is we want this partner to be a different person. We
Yep.
want them to value something that's different. So that's a change.
Mm-hmm.
Changing personality is kind of what we are just talking about here. And so there's all these types of change. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a spectrum. I think the better question again is, it's not can people change, it's how and when do they change. Behaviors can be easier to
Yep.
change.
Yep.
Beliefs, that can be pretty difficult to change. There has to be a strong need to be able to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Personality, more difficult to change.
Yep.
It can be a bit more stable. And so I think as we talk about some of this today and examples of what can change and maybe what's more difficult to change, I want to keep this in mind. Is that how you would describe it as well?
I would describe it that way. Yeah, absolutely. But when you were talking about it, I was thinking, my first thought was, well, Do you ever have a client that is requesting a personality change?
They aren't. The
Well,
people around them might be.
yeah. But like, I'm trying to think of when I was saying, I was thinking, okay, I don't ever hear people say, hey, I want this person to be an extrovert, and right now they're an introvert. I think most of the time, the client organizations seem to understand that you can be a leader and still be an introvert.
Right.
Where I have seen more desire for personality change is really around level of conscientiousness or level of flexibility. That seems to be the, I don't know. You were just talking about, I was going, well, I understand why people want to change the behavior, but how often are you trying to change who somebody is? Like, are you getting clients that articulate, I want you to change who this person is?
No, no, I don't think so. That is extremely rare. And if that was the request, is hey, I want you to make Dave more conscientious, I would say, well, uh, I don't think so.
You would say David has a lot of other really important skills, and you would bring him on.
Yes, Dave, that's what I would say. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Going back to your introversion extroversion one, I talk to a lot of leaders who will say, hey, I need just today
Hmm.
talking to someone I'm coaching and their leader, and one of the big opportunities for this person is just to speak up more.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he'll say things like, why am I just going to agree with the
Yep.
other three people who have talked? Right. So things that
Yep.
we hear a lot, like,
Yep.
I'll let you know when I disagree, but I'm not, if I agree, my silence means I agree with you.
Yeah.
And
So
so I think it's like those types of behaviors,
yes.
I'll hear that pretty frequently.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important as a coach or as a consultant to make sure that the parties involved understand that
Hmm.
you can change. We're not asking you to change who you are.
No.
We're telling you to take up more space in a room. You
Hmm.
can take up more space in a room. You can talk faster. You can talk louder. You can talk more frequently. You can be less filtered. All of those things are behaviors that, it doesn't mean you're changing who you are, but it does mean you are approaching your job differently.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that, like, when we think about change, I think that can change.
Yep. Yeah. And behavior change, I think, is the tip of the spear as it relates to change. And is at least where I spend pretty much all of my time
Yeah.
when I'm working developmentally with leader.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think sometimes these questions about belief systems and purpose, I don't think we have ever changed anyone's personality, but we will have lots of conversations about belief systems and purpose.
Hmm.
And there may be some tweaks over time that occur for some leaders there as well.
Yeah.
But those situations are a bit more different, and we'll talk
Hmm.
about that in a second.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I would say behavior change, where you and I probably spend most of our time,
Yeah.
where leaders or anyone, even outside of work, who is looking to make adjustments to change, is probably going to start
Mhm.
because it is the easier thing to do. As you
Yes.
mentioned, I'm not telling you to be an extrovert if you're an introvert.
Right.
I'm telling you to speak up more, take more space, be a bit more assertive so that your ideas aren't overlooked.
Right. Right.
And you can continue to be more introverted. That's just who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Have you worked with leaders before where you've had conversations about their belief systems, their values, and you've noticed those change over the course of an engagement with you?
I don't know if yes. Well, I mean, I'm gonna kind of, and in that, I do feel like it is our job as a coach to help people reframe things
Mhm,
in a way that fits their pre-existing personality or
mhm.
sort of, again, the constellation of characteristics.
Yep.
Like, so for example, somebody may prefer I'm just trying to think of a typical thing. Someone's lower on flexibility, they're more methodical, they're more detail oriented, they hate to make mistakes. And I think that, it's our job to look at it and go like, well, what's the reason for showing up that way? Why are you whatever it is. In this case, I'm trying to describe someone that's too perfectionistic.
Yep.
Well, what's the reason for that perfectionism, which is showing up by personality in this like super conscientious, methodical work style, but that could be debilitating as far as your ability to innovate or think out of the box or whatever. And so I think if I can work on the fear of failure or the what happens if you make a mistake, why is your in this, I'm making this up, but maybe your identity is tied to being perfect. Maybe as a, growing up in an environment where you had to be infallible and, and you've over identified with that. And now you don't, now you're 45 years old and you don't need to show up that way anymore. And so I think if we can change the way they think about those things, then personality traits like flexibility or conscientiousness can change.
Yeah. So quick diversion. When you start, or at least when I start working with someone as a coach for the first time, I will oftentimes ask them to give me their 15, 20-minute personal background, kind of just describe how they grew up, their family dynamics, things like that. And at times people are really interested and engaged to tell me some of that. And then there are times when I'll get some pushback. Well, I'm here to talk about work. Why are you asking me about how I grew up? And it's exactly for the reason you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
The things that we do, sure, we are the product of of all of our experiences up until this point at any given time. And when we're younger, we are, a bit more moldable
Yeah.
than we are when we're older. So I have to oftentimes, to those people in particular, try to convince them that I'm not trying to, psychoanalyze them necessarily, but just try to understand some of their background and their history in a way that might help me understand why they do what they do, why that's their instinct or their orientation.
Right.
But I'll get some pushback every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so we start with behavior change there. We talk about, I was asking you about values, and do you work with someone or have you worked with people who change their values? I certainly have. And I think the examples that come to mind for me are not necessarily that the values changed a ton, but that people are just instinctual beings oftentimes and aren't aware of what those values or belief systems are. They're hazier. They're
Yeah.
not clear.
Wait, so what do you mean? So then through coaching, they get more clarity and then the value shifts?
Yeah, like I will have a couple sessions with people depending upon the situation where I just ask them, "Hey, what are your values? What's important to you?
Yeah.
What do you believe to be true?"
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then there's some questionnaires sometimes that we'll use to help, provide more concrete answers for those
Mm-hmm.
individuals. But I'm oftentimes amazed how very successful people have never thought about that.
Yeah. I don't think I've thought about it. I think
Given
one of our first episodes, I think you did an exercise, and it's not something that I think about much,
about values,
about my own values.
yeah,
Do you think about your values?
doing this job, so I can't tell if it's a function of age or a function of the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Doing this job has caused me to think about my value system more. Um, but I would say 6 or 7 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to articulate in a coherent way my values.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about them when we talked about parenting.
Oh, you and I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? But for your job or for anybody's job, why do you think the values, being aware of their values, is important? Like, how are you using it?
I'm using it to better understand why they might do what they do and what they find to be important versus what's just instinctual and maybe less reflected on. What's kind of at level of awareness and what's below level of awareness. Because I think everyone has a set of values. Now, for some people, they're stronger than they are for others. And obviously, for some people, you know, they're more aware of what these values are, and others, they just kind of simmer beneath the surface.
Yeah.
But I think almost everyone has a set of values that either were instilled upon you over, when you're younger, or that you develop over time based on your own experiences.
So let me this because I'm not this is not for the pod. I'm just asking the serious question. because I've never understood this all the way back from my master's degree. I never understood, because there's all this conversation about values and identifying like what are your top 5 values or whatever. If I look at one of those spreadsheets, or not, whatever, one of those, here's
Yeah.
typical values, pick your top 5 or whatever. You take an assessment and it gives you your top 5. I will, the 5 will look good to me, but if you gave me another 5, those would also all look good to me. Like, I don't think there's any value that would be on one of those assessments that I would say, I hate family. I'm like, there's no, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's the same for everybody. So I don't know it doesn't seem that, it doesn't feel helpful for me to know what my values are. Cause I think I have your exact same value. I'm pretty sure that if you gave me your top 5 values, I would say, yeah, those are mine too. And if you gave me my wife's, I would say, yeah, those are mine all. You know what I mean? Like I'm, it's not, I don't know what the right word is, but it's not, it doesn't separate people well enough, in my opinion.
Well, and I don't think that it needs to separate anyone. Why would it separate?
Wrong word. It doesn't differentiate.
Okay.
You know, it's like a question, why does it need to differentiate?
Well, yeah, I mean, because I'm just thinking, well, part of it makes sense, right? You and I, we are similar. We're different in ways too, but we're similar in a lot of ways, and it makes sense, right? We both were interested in people. We both became psychologists. We both do this line of work. So just there aren't many people who do that.
Okay, but let me say it this way. Your and my approach to people management is different.
Yep.
But you and I have the same, I would think, very similar value structures. So if you're coaching and using the values, why is that helpful? Because I'm a very different leader than you are, but our values are the same.
I think I wouldn't describe you as a very different leader. I would describe you as having a slightly different style than mine, but I think we share a lot of qualities. I think qualities we share, again, you're
That is
people
probably true.
focused. Yes. So we're different in ways that
Yeah,
I'm going to be a bit more involved in what's going on, and you're going to be less involved
yeah,
in what's going on. People are going to come to you more, and I'm going to probably insert myself more. Like, that's going to be a
yeah,
difference in
yeah,
the style of people who work with us. But
yeah.
that may be part of a value, though. That's probably not part of value. It's just part of our personalities.
Right.
But
Okay,
I would,
it's a good point. It's a good point that as I'm talking about it, like, I don't think you and I also by personality aren't that far apart, and our management styles are in the big spectrum of management are probably not that different.
right, if you're focused on like CMA, then yeah, we're pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you were to do a bell curve of management styles, we're
Yeah,
very close.
yeah, yeah. Okay, all right, okay. I'm trying to think of other example.
Wait, so other values would be, so I agree with you because I've gone through the whole list of
Mm-hmm.
values before.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm just like, all right, well, family, friendships, stuff. I'm just like, I mean, sure, like I don't know how to prioritize some of this. But what ends up coming up at the bottom of the list oftentimes for me is, like status.
Oh, that's interesting. So status would be more. That's a differentiator.
Right. That would be differentiated for us.
Yeah.
But things that come to the top, and this is part of how I figured out what some of the values that I want to instill in my kids, right? Are being empathetic, being aware of the people around you, your impact on them,
Mm.
and understanding that, assuming that you will have a good life, that it's your responsibility to pay that forward. That's a value of mine. And that's something I instill
Yeah.
in my kids. And I think that does frame how I go about the world around me. And if
I-
someone was coaching me, I think that would be helpful for them to know that
yes.
some of the things that I do or don't do could be, at least in part, due to the fact that that is a value of mine.
I got it. So you're sort of reverse engineering it or maybe you're engineering it the right way. You're looking at people's behavior. You're not looking at someone's behavior and saying, whatever, you're a bad manager because your values are askew. What you're saying is, let's look at what your values are. And for each of those values, well, what are you doing in service of that value? And that might be
Yes.
like, do you manage in service of that value or do you not? If you, we may
Right.
both have empathy as a top value, but I may not be doing anything with it. Maybe I'm not leaning
Right.
into it as a leader. Okay, that makes
Right.
sense.
Or you lean into it differently than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably part of where our personalities come into play as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's still a value of yours.
Yeah.
Just because we have the same values doesn't mean. I mean, I think you go back to like religious and philosophical orientation. I mean, religions are just philosophical orientations, right? There
Yeah.
are how many billions of Christians in the world? How many billions of Muslims in the world? 100 million or however many Jewish people there are in the world is major world religions. They can have different values.
Yeah.
They don't have the same,
Yeah.
but there's some similarities in those orientations, at least hypothetically,
Right.
that bring those people together.
Yeah. Well, I like what you're saying because I think, back to the idea of change, I think the through line with change, in my opinion, is that there's intentionality
Hmm.
around behavior. And what you're doing by clarifying what the values are and then having people audit their behaviors is helping them be more intentional
You're right.
about leaning into whatever the behavior is. If I look at my values and I go, family is a value, but I work 70 hours a week, I'm not leaning into that value. That's it. So I guess in that case, the question becomes, is it really a value or is your behavior out of whack?
Right. Or a third, it's a value, but it's not a value above and beyond achievement.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
your number 3 value, even though it feels maybe kind of shitty for you to acknowledge that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That was convincing. You did that. That was a convincing explanation. Well done.
I know.
I know.
uh, so let's move a bit more. So we've talked about the types of change and how this is a pretty common type of conversation to have. But let's go back for a second. Why is change hard? Why do people not change in these different areas that we've talked about? And let's just focus again on behaviors, belief systems, personalities. It makes a bit more sense. It's more biological, or at least it can be. But let's focus on those first two, maybe.
Why is change hard?
Why do people don't do it?
Yeah, I think because it represents. It's a good question. Like, why is it hard? I mean, my first reaction was, well, it represents the unknown. It would look different for you. You have to give something up to do it.
Yep.
Whatever you're doing right now at some level is adaptive. So it's
Yep.
working for you, whether it makes you feel good or get the results you want or whatever. You know how to do it, and you've at some level you've chosen to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Having to give up on something that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
So even thinking like, even if you're like whatever, if you're cheating on your spouse and you're like, well, that can't feel good for anybody. Well, there's a part of it that does feel good. No matter how egregious the behavior is, there's a part of it that does feel good,
Right.
right?
There's an incentive there.
Something, whether it's drug use, I don't care what it is. And the same thing, like at work, not speaking up in meetings or ignoring your direct reports or all that. There's some level that leads to a good feeling or comfort. That's why you've chosen to do it. And so to change is you have to have a hell of a motivation to change something that works.
Right. So, yeah, I'll differentiate it, I think, between those two different types of change that we're talking about. So, behavior change, I would say, usually it's lack of awareness. Like most of us go through life
Yeah.
well intended, not believing that there's anything we need to change.
Uh-huh.
Only until we are confronted with examples. And again, work oftentimes tends to be one of those places where that happens.
Mm-hmm.
a bit more frequently than maybe outside of work,
Mm-hmm.
unless something big happens in your life, where you start to see, oh, well, this person doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Or what I'm doing is going to prevent me from achieving something I want to achieve.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that now.
Yes. Okay, but let me pause you. Let's talk about Rob for a second. Is there anything that you can think of, any behavior at work that you've known you need to change, but were unable to make the adjustment?
We're unable to,
Yeah, or whatever, didn't choose to.
didn't choose to. Not that I can think of it. I think that kind of goes back to just my agreeable nature. If and my achievement orientation. If there's something that I know that other people don't like about me,
Mm-hmm.
um, in general, I am willing to reflect on that and make the change. Now, I would say that my agreeableness over the past 4 or 5 years has not significantly, but I felt a slight difference in my agreeableness. So I'm more likely to just hear what people have to say and then say, well, I don't think for these reasons it makes sense for me to change.
Yeah.
So again, I'm doing what people like you and I, strong extroverts, do best is coming up with something as I talk more about it out loud. But so the answer to your question is yes, but it's more recent and not super significant.
Well, can you share what it is?
I have heard feedback, sometimes I can be slightly less agreeable. I would argue it's just me being slightly less agreeable and nothing specifically that I need to change, just me being a bit more critical and
Mm-hmm.
asking more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't plan on doing anything different about that. I've made a change, but I'm not going to then maybe revert back to being the overly agreeable person I was for a longer period of time.
So that's an example of you've gotten feedback. Rob, you're pushing back too much. Be more agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
And you've looked at it and said, I hear you. I understand you. I don't care what you think. And so I'm going to keep the behavior that others around you may think is maladaptive.
Right. But then I think the second consideration there is so there's awareness and then there's an incentive. What's my incentive to change?
Yeah.
I think my incentive to change from being highly agreeable to still fairly highly agreeable.
Yes. Yeah.
There was an incentive for me there because I think
Mhm.
that makes me a better professional in what I do and a better leader in our environment.
Mhm. I mean, so I bring it up because I think this is a perfect example of what the experience is for most people. If I say to somebody, and we're going to let's just do the introvert extrovert example or the take up more space
Mhm.
example. I can say to somebody, you need to take up more space. You need to be a more of an out front leader. But they're doing what you did, right? Which is you hear the feedback, you understand the feedback, and then you ask yourself, well, from my lens, is it really important for me
Right.
to be an out in front leader? And often, but I think the reason why people don't change is they go, I actually don't think it's a big deal. I lead when I need to lead. People follow me organically over time. I have the respect that I want because I don't make a lot of mistakes. I'm in control of what I say. I like how I'm doing it. And so there's not going to be any change. Right. And that's the same thing that I think you're describing is you've gotten feedback and you look at it and go, I understand the feedback, but I don't think it's good. I think I'm more effective if I am a little bit disagreeable.
Right. But if we stick with me for a sec, I also got feedback earlier on in my career that I was too agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made some adjustments over time.
Mm-hmm. But so
And so
that time you must have agreed that it made it. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like there's a variable in behavior change, which is getting people to prioritize it and they have to believe in it. They have to agree that the change needs to happen.
mhm.
Otherwise it's super difficult to make the change. And that's where you can give as much feedback as you want, but if you don't figure out what the driver is or the
Yep.
reason why the behavior exists, you're getting nowhere.
100% agree. Because otherwise it's just someone's perception.
Yeah.
And everyone's perceptions around me can be different. And that I mean and that if I try talk about being too agreeable, if I try to do that then I would just constantly be spinning
Yeah. Yeah.
and never get out of bed.
Yeah. Responding to every piece of feedback.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So no, yeah, right. So the awareness is a necessary but not sufficient step in the
Hmm.
process. There's also, yeah, the incentive or the motivation, and then there is the that self-efficacy, that understanding that all right, I can do something about this.
Yeah.
I have a growth mindset
Yeah.
around this particular area.
Yeah. That's really important. You may look at it and go, there's just no way I could make an adjustment in this area. And then you won't do it.
Right.
Hmm.
So I mean that even if the incentive is there, if you don't believe that you can make this change, then
Hmm.
you're not going to do it.
That's so interesting because I was trying to think about, you're talking about change, like change at work. And then back in my mind, I'm thinking about, what about like drug use? And
Mm.
the model that you're taught in school is this motivational interviewing model. You've heard of that before, right? But essentially, you're trying to meet somebody where they are, and you're trying to just help them change their framework, their mindset a little bit to move down the line closer and closer and closer
Yep.
to changing the behavior, right? You're going to think about it, you're going to prepare for it, you're going to, right? There's a step. You're going to consider it, what's the whatever. But a part of that, which I don't know that it's directly addressed in that motivational interviewing model, is the belief that you can do it. And that is
Yep.
a big thing that gets in the way of people stopping really maladaptive behaviors.
Mhm.
I know what's good for me. I more than anything want to change this horrible behavior, super destructive behavior, but I don't think I can. So I'm not going to try.
Yep.
That's interesting. I hadn't sort of put that together, but I think that's a big part of it.
100%.
Hmm.
I wrote my dissertation way back in the day about factors that predict resistance to changes in organizations.
Hmm.
And the change that I looked at was conversion in a hospital system from paper-based to electronic medical records. And the majority of people in my sample were nurses. Um, and this wasn't a primary focus of mine, but I do remember some findings that emerged that essentially it was around self-efficacy. In other words, I think I can use this system.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like I think I'll be able to learn it. It's new and I don't know it now, but I think I can. And I think a lot of the literature in change, at least in organizational systems, would say the same thing: is if I think I can, then I'm more open to it. If I think I can't,
Yeah.
then I'm not, regardless of the incentive.
Yeah. I, I don't think as a coach, I don't think I spend enough time there. Like
Where?
helping people believe that they can make the changes that are being asked of them,
Mm.
which is it. That's a good insight.
Yeah, I I do, but I think the interesting thing in a lot of the work that we do, well, I guess let me ask you, do you find that a lot of people you coach do not have that self-efficacy, do not have that sense that they can make the change?
No, I don't find it as like a barrier, but I think it's probably just like, that's not the angle that I take on it, right? Like the angle I am taking on it is helping them. I guess I'm addressing it by usually telling them that they have the skill already. Like when
Mhm.
I was starting this discussion, if it's an emotional intelligence thing or if it's a management thing, I'm sort of trying to say to them, look, you have all of the horsepower to do X, Y, or Z,
Mhm.
but you're not prioritizing it because you've convinced yourself that this other thing is more important. I'm just whatever. You can't, you don't think you have the ability to think strategically, but that's because you've grown up in a place where you had to focus on
Yeah.
what's right in front of you, but you have the horsepower, right? You know how to be objective, right? So I'm just trying to convince them that if they just shift their framework, they would be doing the thing. I think the subtext there is the confidence, but I
Yeah.
I am not intentional about trying to build that confidence, maybe as much as I should, given what we've just talked about.
Right. I think for me, I find that most people that I'm coaching are innately motivated
Hmm.
to make whatever changes
Hmm.
it is that they need to make. Now, again, they may not know how to do it. They're going to try and they're going to fail
Hmm.
multiple times. Um, They're going to disagree with maybe components of some of the feedback that they're receiving. So that's usually what we end up talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say I can only name a handful of people, at least that I'm working with now, who really part of the reason we're working is no, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
Or I'm worried that I can't. And that's before we get to any tactics.
Yeah.
That's what we're focused
Yeah.
on, is that sense of your own agency to do something.
Yeah. I think that's good.
So we've talked a lot about what individuals can do, and how we can work with individuals. But what about outside of us as individuals? What can make change difficult outside of us? So let's say we're self-aware, we're incentivized, and we believe we can do it. Why else would we not change?
Yeah, because I guess the structure around us makes the change maladaptive.
Mm.
If
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of an example. If I'm trying to be a more creative thinker, and every time I make a mistake, my boss threatens to fire me, it's
Yep.
gonna be hard for me to be like Mr. Innovative because
Yep.
I'm in this hostile work environment.
Right. That's almost the exact example that comes to mind for me. Is I will oftentimes hear from managers of people I'm working with or executives say, yeah, this person needs to be a bit more innovative. Well, tell me what that means.
Yeah.
Well, they just need to be a little bit more like, chime in with an idea or two here. Whereas the reason that this person could be extremely innovative,
Yeah.
but over the course of, 10 years working at the same place or with the same leader, what they found is no,
Mhm.
this person does not want me to be any more innovative.
Yeah.
They want me to say more. Well, I don't want to say anything because they poo-poo on everyone's ideas all the time.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's not about me. It's someone else,
Mhm.
or it's my environment that prevents me
Yeah.
from changing.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And I think that's true in relationships at work and relationships outside of work as well. That people may want to make some changes, but their significant others, their family, friends, whatever it is, makes that change much more difficult. Or that person has to give up a lot
Yeah.
in order to make some of those changes,
Yes.
which could include giving up their relationships at times.
Right. That is like from a family system standpoint, it's amazing how you have your family unit and everybody plays a role. And if you start acting outside of that, even if it's for the better, it creates a lot of distress.
Yeah.
Like, the number of people, both as a coach and as a therapist, I have heard people give up substances or start working out or start eating healthy. I used to work at a weight loss and fitness camp when I was in school. When I was in undergrad, in the summers, I was the behavior modification specialist at a weight loss and fitness camp. And
Mm-hmm.
here you have these parents that are putting their kids in these camps to lose weight and they would lose like 35 or 40 pounds over the course of the summer. And then they would go back into this broken system with their parent, and the parents unwilling to change the way that they eat.
Yep.
And it's like, how could you not see that your kid is they've made a change, and we're going to put them right back into that home where they're getting really unhealthy food.
Yep. Yep. Because it threatens their identities.
Yeah.
It threatens who they are,
Yeah.
or it's maybe even just more basic than that. It inconveniences them.
Yeah.
Right. They sent their kids for you to fix them.
Right.
I don't want to do anything different.
Right. You're not taking away my coping. This is my
No.
I'm not going to change how I cope.
Yeah. I'm downing this 2-liter bottle of Coke every day, and that's just what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess just to wrap it up, I remember one of our first episodes, we talked about like a hot take that one of us had. And this isn't necessarily a hot take of mine, but something I said was, in the nature nurture debate,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to give a bit more credence to nurture. That affects who we are, in my opinion and in my experience, slightly more. And I think the end of our conversation here gets at that. It's people's environment and experience that I think informs how they
Yep.
show up, much more than just the chemicals in their brain, which certainly play a big part.
Yeah. No, I
But I
agree.
think
I would be
what we're
way.
talking about here today aligns with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. 100.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, Dave, that's what I have for us.
Well done, Rob.
Awesome.
I was trying to think of a way to end it where I said, I said, welcome to the podcast. And I was gonna say like, yeah, you performed well. That's not.
I don't need your validation, David.
That's great. Those of you that are listening, please let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach out to us at shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com and all social media, Shrinkspace Show.
That's right. Thanks,
All right.
everyone. Thanks, Dave.